Welcome to another Thursday of the Explorers Club Chapter Connect. My name is Nancy McGee, and I am the VP of Chapters. Although every time they write up a bio, they say that I'm the new VP of Chapters, which I appreciate because there's nothing new about me in so many ways. But it's really nice to be here with an incredible lineup. Good friend, George Kourounis, chapter chair from Canada, a couple of my Women Diver Hall of Fame Sea Sisters. We've got another fantastic group of presenters. And I know this evening is going to pass by far too quickly, and we'll still have 100 questions we want to ask afterwards. So let me go ahead and get this launched because it's our speakers that are here that need to be in the limelight, and they have spent a lot of time getting their presentations ready, and they've got a short period of time. So I'm going to turn this over very quickly. But first, I'd like to introduce George. George is the chair of the Canadian chapter and is an explorer in residence for the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, which I will add, George, as you remember, my husband is as well. Very proud of that. And he wanted me to pass along his best wishes to you guys. He's traveling right now. For 25 years, George has specialized in documenting extreme forces of nature and natural disasters on every continent, including tornadoes, hurricanes, and volcanic eruptions. George frequently appears on television programs. In fact, he's really our TV or Hollywood star here. He's been on the Science Channel and the Weather Network, and he hosted 50 episodes of the Angry Planet TV series. George was also the recipient of the Stephenson Medal from the Canadian chapter and the Leif Erikson Award from the Exploration Museum. And George, of course, was named one of Canada's top 45 living explorers by Canadian Geographic magazine. That's an incredible accomplishment. George has also given 5 TED Talks and hosts a Guinness World Record for his explorations in Turkmenistan with National Geographic. So George, welcome. This is your show. It's all yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Nancy. And it is indeed not my show. I'm not giving a big presentation tonight. I'm turning all of that over to these amazing group of people that I have assembled. And as the Canadian chapter chair, I think of you as a bit of a Canadian, honorary Canadian chapter member, if I may, because you, as you mentioned before we went live, you're actually from Calgary. Your husband is a member or is a fellow of the RCGS. So I feel there's some pretty deep ties there. So
very much so. Thank you.
You're always welcome to come visit at any time.
As soon as the border opens, I'm there. I've got a lot of family there. Can't wait.
Not soon enough. Not soon enough. Canada, of course, is a vast nation. We span three oceans from the Atlantic to the Pacific to the Arctic. Second largest nation in land mass, and we have one chapter that covers all of that. The Canadian chapter is the largest of all the international chapters and is the 4th largest of all of the Explorers Club chapters. So trying to wrangle people together for meetings and events can be really tricky. So I want to give a couple of quick shout outs before we hit to our speakers tonight. Because Canada is such a vast territory, we have 4 regional directors. Sunniva Sorby takes care of the British Columbia and Yukon region. We have Ian McNairn, who takes care of the Prairie Provinces and Northwest Territories. Travis Steffens deals with Ontario and Nunavut, and Dr. Kirsten Johnson deals with the Maritime provinces and Quebec. So without their help, it would be very difficult. It'd be like herding cats, and it's certainly very different than, let's say, a chapter like San Diego, where everyone is compressed into a very small area. And I would also be remiss without mentioning Kensington Tours, and specifically Jeff Wilner, who have been a patron to the Canadian chapter for so long by helping us with meeting spaces and helping fund our medals and such. So tremendous thanks to them. Here in Canada, we have an interesting situation where we have a group of explorers in the Explorers Club, and we also have the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. And the mandate of the society is to promote Canada, basically make Canada better known to Canadians and to the world. And because of that, there's a fair amount of overlap in the membership between those two organizations. And I thought it'd be really great for the Canadian chapter, especially since this is our 2nd time doing a Chapter Connect, to to bring the RCGS into the fold. And everyone that you're going to hear from tonight is both a member or fellow of the Explorers Club and a fellow of the RCGS. So I put the call out and people answered that call. And not only that, we actually have the CEO of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society with us tonight to tell us a little bit more about what the Society does and its role in promoting Canada in terms of exploration and some really exciting things that are going on. So John Geiger, he's an author, he's an explorer, he's written about the third man effect, where often explorers and climbers feel like there's an extra presence there with them, this particular phenomena. He was part of the expedition that discovered Franklin's ship, the Erebus. He's not only the CEO of the RCGS, he is also recently been named a member of the Order of Canada, which is the highest civilian honor that is handed out by the Canadian government. So I want to hand it over to my friend John Geiger, CEO of the RCGS, to tell us a little bit more about what they do over there.
Thanks so much, George, for your very kind introduction. It's so great to see so many RCGS fellows and friends that we interact with very regularly, of course. The connections, I'm of course delighted and honored to be a fellow of the Explorers Club and have been, I think, since something like 2004, and love the club, love what it does, and so it's a real honor for me to be part of this panel today. And what's interesting is the links between the RCGS and the Explorers Club go back many years. One of our founding fellows, in fact, was none other than Stephenson, Bill Tomer Stephenson, who was twice, I think, two separate terms of office president of the Explorers Club, and obviously a great Arctic explorer. And in fact, a number of our first class of fellows of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society were also fellows of the Explorers Club. Rudolf Anderson is another example of that. So, the links go right back to 1929 when the Society was founded. And as George said, our mandate is to make Canada better known to Canadians and to the world, to inspire, exploration of Canada, education about Canada and about the peoples of Canada, the Canadian environment, and all the incredible array of panelists you have today are distinguished fellows of our society who have contributed to that knowledge and have done so much work to sort of excite interest amongst Canadians and people all over the world about the natural wonders and geographic wonders of Canada. So it's a real pleasure to see them all. As George said, it's an exciting time for the Society. We have a new headquarters in Ottawa, 50 Sussex Drive, which of course at the moment is closed to the public, but we're very excited about the possibility that it may actually open at some point in the next, George, give us another year maybe, right? No, let's hope it's a lot sooner than that. So we're very excited about that. We're actually in the process of expanding the building. It's a spectacular building now, but we've got funding to increase the Sir Christopher Ondaatje reading room in size by 2.5 times and introduce a map room as well as a Hall of Honor. So all of our fellows and all of our medalists will be, not fellows, but medalists will be actually honored in the Hall of Honor, much like the RGS has at its headquarters building in London. So we're very excited about that plan. And we also have just embarked on a really exciting partnership with the National Geographic Society. We've been friends with NGS for many years, and indeed, Gilbert Grosvenor, for example, is a gold medalist of the RCGS, as is Mike Ulica, the current president of the National Geographic Society. So we have been partnering with NGS for decades, mainly in the space of geographic literacy, so classroom education. But recently we have embarked on a really exciting new program called the Trebek Initiative, named after Alex Trebek. Alex has been a supporter over the years, both of the National Geographic Society and its educational work, and also the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. And he was the honorary president of the RCGS up until the time of his tragic passing. So a great friend of ours, somebody who will, be close to our hearts forever, Alex Trebek. And I'm delighted that we've been able to partner with NGS to launch a program called the Trebek Initiative, which is essentially a wonderful new grant program. I know that Christian is somewhat aware of this because we've been talking to him already, but it's a very exciting opportunity to fund research in Canada by Canadians, but also non-Canadians. And it's a joint program of those two organizations. And we've built a substantial war chest, I'm happy to say, over the last 6 months with the help of David Court, one of our fellows, and who's also a member of the Hubbard Council of the National Geographic Society. So there's a lot going on there. We are going to have a few expeditions coming out the gates, I think, in the next month or two, but by next year we'll be fully up and running. And these are going to be substantial grants that are given to really exciting expedition ideas, including covering all sorts of different areas, including, of course, we've got some wonderful divers here, but also and cave explorers. But really anything that takes place in Canada would be of interest, including photography and even some educational programming. So, you know, it's just been announced, and we're very, very excited about it. We're excited by the incredible level of support we've received from donors across Canada who are really committed to supporting exploration and you know, transmitting information to the broader public about Canada and its geography and its natural wonders and of course its cultures as well. So anyway, George, that's just a brief snapshot of RCGS, what we're doing. We of course have recently had Richard Weiss up to Ottawa to our headquarters. Well, not that recently, when we could actually invite people in. He came, attended the Fellows Dinner, and he's a medalist and a fellow of the Society as well. So we have a great connection with the Explorers Club as well, and always interested in what the Explorers Club's up to. And I think there's lots that we can probably do together as well. So George, back to you.
Oh, thanks so much, John. Now, this is the first I've heard about this expansion at 50 Sussex, so I'm really excited about that. I suppose now is a pretty good time to deal with that, so that I'm really excited. I'm going to pick your brain some more about that later to learn more, some more details about that. And yes, there's so many great expeditions that are going on. Even now during COVID, I was trying to get Alison Christosiello on here as well, but she is currently on the side of Mount Logan, which, for those of you who are unaware, it's the largest mountain, highest mountain in Canada, and she is in charge of the Ice Core lab here in Canada. But she is obviously unavailable. She's on a tent on the side of a mountain on a glacier somewhere. So, as is the way with explorers around here. But we do have some amazing explorers with us tonight. As one of the explorers in residence for the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, it is a tremendous honor for me to introduce the original explorer in residence for the RCGS, the very first one, Jill Heinerth. If you're not familiar with her work, you probably have been under a rock somewhere. She's an underwater explorer, photographer, author, filmmaker. She's done expeditions to Antarctica to dive inside of icebergs. She's been diving in lava tubes and under the Sahara Desert. She literally wrote the book on cave diving. And her memoir is Into the Planet. It was lauded by the Wall Street Journal, Oprah Magazine, New York Times. She just wrote a kid's book called The Aquanaut. She's a fellow of the International Scuba Diving Hall of Fame, Underwater Academy of Arts and Sciences, Women Divers Hall of Fame. And just not too long ago, last year, if I'm not mistaken, she was awarded the William Beebe Award for her ocean explorations by the Explorers Club. So I could go on and on, but I want to get to hear what Jill Heinerth has to say. Jill.
All right. Thanks, George. It's great to be here with you all tonight. I'm just going to share my screen here so I can share a few images with you, because I want to take you on a little bit of a journey through what I call Canada C4. So I think of Canada as having 4 coasts, really. And that's what I want to give you a little sneak peek about. Canada has an incredibly robust and active diving population all across the country. Incredibly active, considering, you know, when I grew up as a little girl, my mom said, nobody dives in Canada, it's too cold. But truly, I have been to every province and territory in Canada and met with divers all across the country, and there's an active community just about everywhere. So it's exciting to to bring them all into exploration as well. In my work with the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, I've also had a chance to not just meet divers across the country, but also get into classrooms across the country and hopefully inspire that next generation of young divers. And with the help of the Garfield Weston Foundation, the Royal Canadian Geographical Society has managed to get me to every province and territory to visit with kids in classrooms. Now, COVID made that a little more challenging, but I did manage to complete 242 classroom visits online in 2020 to keep up with reaching kids. Because my goal as an explorer in residence is to be that woman that I wish I had met when I was 10 years old. So I grew up in Ontario, but today my life as an explorer means that I'm carrying a camera and shooting in unusual places all over the world, whether it's the middle of the Sahara Desert or even up in Canada's Arctic. Sometimes you'll find me inside a volcano like this one in Lanzarote, but most of the time you'll find me in underwater cave systems. But like I said tonight, I'm going to share with you 4 coasts of Canada: the Arctic, the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Great Lakes. Because if we look at the Great Lakes watershed from the beginning all the way out to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, that's longer than the Atlantic Ocean. So we better include that as a coastline as well. We have over 204,000 kilometers of ocean coastline. 8% of our country is covered by lakes. We have 9% of the world's fresh water and only 0.5% of the global population. So some of my diving expeditions have taken me to Canada's north, to the sea ice, the ever dwindling sea ice that the Inuit people know as the land that when it's frozen connects them with their communities, with their cultural heritage and hunting practices, the land which beneath is filled with all kinds of incredible things from the base of the food chain on up. In the Arctic, as we're exploring, sometimes we're on top of the sea ice in places like this in Lancaster Sound, diving in and around icebergs that are frozen into the sea ice, icebergs that have actually come from as far away as Greenland. We're also diving inside of natural leads in the ice, these very straight cracks and crevices that develop as that sea ice breaks up in the summer. And we dive at the flow edge, the place where ice meets ocean, sometimes in a razor sharp edge and other times more of a jagged mess of ice. And to do these projects, we're camping on top of the sea ice, traveling with skidoos and komatiks, living in tents, and just waiting for these incredible opportunities like this, seeing beluga whales, narwhals at the flow edge, that food buffet that kind of moves and transforms every single day. These days, living on top of the sea ice is getting more difficult. As you can see, it rains more. There's more water on top of the ice. The ice is thinner. It's more dangerous to get to places like the flow edge. And the camping situations are less and less comfortable. Like this, I've had 12 inches of water inside my tent at times, just trying to stay up on top of my cot. But it's worth it for scenes like this, getting a chance to see the life beneath the surface. And it's quite remarkably stunning. As we're diving in these places, you can get a sense of the scale of some of these icebergs. Like this is below the surface and this is above the surface in the same place. This is how we get into the water, very close to these icebergs, setting up with ice screws and testing the edge and using tethers that our Inuit guides secure to us to ensure that we can get back against the currents. Now, you may or may not be able, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor here, but if you can, there's a little smudge of an individual there. That's my diving partner. So that gives you a sense of scale. Later in the season, we dive in ice-free areas like around Nauyot, Nunavut, White Island, where we have a chance to encounter a lot of polar bears, 16 to 20 a day when we're staying in this particular camp. and with a goal of even jumping in the water to swim with these polar bears. I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again, but it was an incredible opportunity to see these massive, massive animals, not just in the water, but climbing out of the water and moving up these cliff faces as well. To give you a sense of scale of some of these bears, there's my hand versus the polar bear's paw print. But according to my diving partner, Mario Cyr, another fellow of the RCGS, he's a little more scared of diving with the walruses, which we also documented for a film we worked on together. But with a caribou smile, let me move on down the Labrador Coast to show you some of the beautiful landscapes of the Torngat Mountains National Parks, where we follow the journey of the icebergs as they continue southward and become resculpted by the wind and the waves, and they roll. As they move down the Labrador Coast, they get smaller and smaller, but they create a bit of a biological wake, dragging along with them incredible animals like humpback whales that follow along this course as well. And sometimes we get a wonderful chance to see them beneath the surface, even very, very close. The seafloor in this region is as colorful as a tropical paradise. It's absolutely stunning, filled with animals that seem to have absolutely no need to fear us whatsoever. And I've been accused of substituting pictures like this with tropical ones, but I assure you, this water is minus 1.8 Celsius. Now, if you want to know more about my Arctic travels, check out Under Thin Ice on the Nature of Things. It streams for free on CBC Gem if you're in Canada. But as we follow this journey of the iceberg down the coast of Labrador to Newfoundland, we see these spectacular chunks of ice just continually being resculpted and reformed. And as you go underwater, you can actually see them fizz and dissolve as they're breaking up and rolling. So we have to pick just the right iceberg to check out beneath the surface, because they're constantly being changed by the waves and the wind and destabilizing as they melt. But for even one opportunity to jump in the water, it's fantastic. And we always take a bit of a chance to grab some of that ice for our cocktails after our explorations. But as we continue down the coast to Newfoundland itself, we dive in some different scenarios here on World War II shipwrecks that were sunk by German U-boats. These colorful vessels that are now artificial reefs, as well as war graves. Stunningly beautiful reef environments just covered with life that's been recruited to glue itself onto the substrates of these vessels. We work with local archaeologists when we find particularly interesting things like the sextants from a couple of wrecks that we did recover for museums in Newfoundland. But beyond the wrecks themselves, we also dive in the mines that provided the ore for these shipwrecks. And if you're not a diver, you can still explore some of these mines on foot close to the coast. But if you want to dive into the mine in the winter, you might have to first dig it out of the snow to go inside and dive in 9 square miles of submerged passages that are filled with the industrial archaeology that remains, the leftovers from what would have been used for the process of mining before these were flooded, when the dewatering pumps were turned off. And it's an amazing place where we find not just machinery, but some very intimate artifacts left behind by the miners themselves. So it's a really special place to me. But also special is the Great Lakes, where I learned to dive in Tobermory, Canada, a place that attracts so many tourists today to these beautiful clear water opportunities to dive on shipwrecks, 150 to 200-year-old wooden shipwrecks that are quite intact today, many of them. They are covered with zebra mussels today, and that's been a part of the reason why the lakes are so clear today. zebra mussels might be great for underwater photographers, but they are not great for the environment because they are an invasive species that's done incredible damage to our lake environments. Deeper in the lakes, I also have an opportunity to do exploration of new shipwrecks. Like here's one that I had an opportunity to be the first photographer to document deep in Lake Ontario, about 260 feet deep. So it's pretty special when you get a chance to be the first person to set your eyes on some of these sites. Also, in the Great Lakes watershed, I'm doing some diving research in Canada's longest underwater cave system in the Ottawa River, the Gervais Three River Cave System. And this place with multiple entries is absolutely fascinating, with over 10 kilometers of underwater passages in pretty grim conditions. But for me, it's special because I'm studying the endangered species that I've found here, very important species for the health of the Great Lakes watershed. Just as a quick aside, this is one of the mussels that I'm documenting that grows a lure out of its own flesh in order to further its reproductive strategies for populating this environment. So it's a really important environment. Now off to the West Coast, we have great diving opportunities there too, on wrecks, as well as in this very abundant Emerald Sea, where we have a chance to encounter colorful encrusted bottom, as well as curious life of many, many descriptions. These strawberry anemones just adhere to all of the rock substrate, and they're absolutely beautiful. But one of my favorite opportunities out west is to swim with the sea lions that are really, really curious, Stellars and Californias that come right up to us when we roll off of our Zodiac. I think of it as a bit of a combination between a playful pack of puppies and a bar fight, because they're pretty aggressive, nipping and tugging at our equipment just to check it out. So that's a quick slice of diving across Canada. And we're very, very blessed with our water resources here. So let me pass it back to George and our next presenter.
Thanks so much, Jill. I imagine diving with those sea lions must be like going to the dog park with a pocket full of treats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Swarmed by all of these dogs.
Yeah.
That great presentation. I saw some familiar faces in there, Rick Stanley and some others.
Mm-hmm.
I have had the opportunity once to dive beside an iceberg, and it is very difficult diving. I was horrendously seasick during that dive. It was one of the worst experiences of my life, but I would do it again in a heartbeat because it is so magical.
Cool.
So kudos to you for doing that kind of thing frequently, especially the cave diving. And we're actually going to stick to the cave theme, but going from the marine environment to more of a terrestrial environment with a gentleman who I have yet to meet in person, but I'm really looking forward to having the opportunity to work with him at some point in the future. And I really hope this happens. Christian Stenner is coming to us from Calgary, Alberta right now. He's been a cave explorer for over 15 years, and he's contributed to numerous expeditions all over North America, including the deepest and longest caves in Canada. He's specialized in exploration and mapping of glacial volcanic caves. So these are caves that are formed by the advection of these volcanic gases up through the glacier. They bore these holes in these subglacial formations. Really beautiful, and hopefully we'll get some good pictures of that in his presentation. He explored the world's largest network of these glacial volcanic caves, over 2 kilometers worth of them inside the crater of Mount St. Helens. So that's really amazing and spectacular. And he also serves as the Alberta coordinator for the Alberta BC Cave Rescue Service. If you're stuck in a cave, you want this guy to be nearby. So Christian Stenner, off to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, George. I'm just gonna do a screen share and we'll get things started. Okay, so as George had mentioned, yeah, the longest cave in Canada, the deepest cave in Canada, and we're going to talk a little bit about these glacial volcanic caves. So it's a little bit of a journey to some of these really prominent sites of Canadian geography, and then we'll get into that other cool volcanic stuff towards the end of my talk. So it's hard to really distill all of the unique features of Canada's underground into a short presentation. So we'll give you a little bit of the highlights, but to sum it up, over the last 50 years, there has been some amazing exploration happening in Canada around the country. And it owes a lot to people like Dr. Derek Ford, who really pioneered cave exploration in Canada with his research group. And even after 50 years, we are still discovering new things and new amazing places that nobody has ever been to before. And it just shows the vastness of Canada and what is left to be discovered. So the first place is Canada's longest cave, called Castleguard. Over 21 kilometers of passages have been mapped so far in this cave in Banff National Park of Canada. And so if we have a look at these passages, 21 kilometers isn't really a lot in comparison to the list of the longest caves in the world, but Castleguard is different in how linear the passages are. It isn't like a maze cave. It's definitely got sort of very long and straight passages that extend underneath the mountain range near Castleguard Mountain, and the cave terminates underneath the Columbia ice field, that 325 square kilometer ice sheet at the north end of Banff National Park. And where it terminates is truly amazing. There's a series of ice blockages, and it's the only place in the world where the plastic flow of ice, of glacier ice, has pushed its way into a cave passage from above. So on this profile view, so that's a side view map, we can see the cave in red and those ice blockages there on the left-hand side. And so we can see that there are multiple camps underground on the diagram, and a number of fissure passages, which we'll talk about a little bit more. So certainly it is a long trip, typically about 5 days, to simply get from the entrance to the ice plug and back. And that's after a 20-kilometer ski to carry all your equipment to the cave. Now, the fissures, these are a sporting passage of the cave. There are kilometers of this. It's called a Vadose passage, and that's a sort of the canyon shape, which is formed above the water table in caves. And it is like the cave without a floor. Truly amazing to see these passages where you have to sort of shimmy along using the friction and your elbows and knees in order to maneuver through the cave. And definitely carrying a pack of camp equipment and all the gear you need for exploration makes this a bit of a chore. So we can see other obstacles, like this one's called Holes in the Floor, which is exactly what you think. It's a series of about 19 holes and rifts that you sort of have to not fall into as you progress further. So this is about halfway through the cave towards that back end of the ice plug where we see this formation. And we have some amazing features. Castleguard is definitely known for some of its amazing cave formations. Some of them are incredibly unique. So what we see here is an example of a nest of cave pearls, which is formed in Castleguard Cave. So forming in a pool of water, you essentially have over thousands of years the agitation of the water and the growth of this calcite formation. Now, cave pearls are typically round, and this is one of only 4 places in the entire world that has cave pearls that have formed in a cube formation, which is a truly unique thing to see. And there is life underground as well. So this is a cave that hovers just above 0 degrees Celsius, and yet we have troglodytic isopod crustaceans that are very common in many areas of the cave. This one called Salmicellus steganothrix, and this is common to a number of caves in the Rocky Mountains. But Castleguard also has unique species. Stygobromus canadensis is an aquatic amphipod that exists literally in about 2 puddles of water in about the middle of the cave and nowhere else in the entire world. So amazing things can live in these environments. Our last expedition in Castleguard was just over a year ago in March of 2020, and it was a two-pronged effort. A team spent 11 days at the cave, and on the left was Objective 1. That is called Boone's Sump. It is the start of an 845-meter-long underwater tunnel, and so we had some people set up to dive and see what was on the other side. And then another team of us spent 6 days in the cave, camped at various places in order to further document the passages that were deeper in the cave as well. So the dive team had Richard Harris, who is an Explorers Club fellow from Australia, along with Craig Challen from Australia and Tom Crisp from New Zealand, to dive Boone's Sump. And they were able to actually get to the end and get into some canyon passage on the other side. So they were able to get a bit further on the far side of the sump. Meanwhile, a team of 6 of us from all across Canada were able to do explorations deeper in the cave. So I'll make a note, we took our helmets off in order to provide the lighting for this photo. You should always go caving with a helmet. But that is the famous ice plug at the back end of Castleguard Cave. And to be there, you are under 234 meters of rock and ice, simultaneously inside a mountain and underneath the ice field. A truly remote and unique place to be. And so our efforts, after 50 years of exploration, we're still pushing the needle. Castleguard is now slightly longer at 21.3 kilometers long and 388 meters deep. And that just shows you a little bit about some of the unique ecosystems and environments that can happen underground. This is the International Year of Caves and Karst. So not only do we have these unique ecosystems, but they say that 10% of the world's population relies on groundwater that comes through cave and karst systems. So the importance of these environments is definitely understated, and they are understudied. So certainly anything we can do to further acknowledge caves and karst and the importance is definitely helpful. So speleologist Chaz Young had determined that Booming Ice Chasm in the Canadian Rockies in southern Alberta is the largest ice cave in North America. So the entrance is this gaping hole on the side of a cliff face on the side of the mountain. And so if we get into this cave, it's been explored over about the past 10 years or so. And what we have found is amazing. A sloping shaft. The deepest part of the cave is now 179 meters below the entrance, and a humongous ice slide. So definitely an amazing place to be. And to give you an idea of the scale, if you can see my mouse, it is basically this little dot is me at the very back. There's 3 people in this photo, and I got to be one of them there. So amazing things are still being found, such as the deepest cave in all of Canada. Bizarro Anima is the name it's been given, and what you're seeing there is the entrance to this cave. So only in the year 2012 was it first discovered and exploration started by members of the Alberta Speleological Society. It's in Fernie, near Fernie, British Columbia, on a remote sort of mountain plateau that had not really been investigated for caves. Now, in 2018, the Bizarro Cave Project was the expedition of the year of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. So really, it's been over only the past 8 to 9 years that this cave has been explored. And during that time, the current depth is now 674 meters below the earth, over 30 separate rappels in order to get to the bottom of this. And in Canadian context, the CN Tower is just over 550 meters deep. So if you're ever in Toronto and looking up, imagine being more or deeper under the earth than the CN Tower is tall. Each one of these grid squares about 100 meters. The deepest shaft in the cave alone is 105 meters, which is about the equivalent of a 33-story office building. So there's definitely a lot of restrictions and obstructions and different passages to navigate holes in the earth, seemingly bottomless, to cross. Over 1.5 kilometers of rope has been used to rig all of this cave to the bottom. So this is another one where expeditions are underground for, say, a week at a time. And the current objective is at the very bottom, a sump named Dieppe. And one of our intrepid cavers named Katie Graham was the first to dive the sump, and how we've arrived at the current depth. Now, here's the thing. She didn't get to the very bottom, and out of about 40 unexplored leads in Bizarro Anima, the bottom of this underwater lake is one of them. All right, so let's get into the other part of the presentation, which is to talk about what George had mentioned, the glacial-volcanic caves. So I'm taking you out of Canada here, but within the niche of caving, an extremely weird sub-niche has been the exploration of these very unique cave systems formed by volcanic gas and steam on glaciated volcanoes. So Mount Rainier in Washington State has 2 overlapping craters, the west and east crater. And within the east crater, we have found is the world's largest glacial volcanic cave system. So all around the crater rim, we have a number of these steaming fumaroles that cause heat and gas to form and carve the cave passages in the glacier ice. And so those fumaroles can range in temperature, but through thermal imaging, we can see them as sometimes hot patches of the ground or vents, which are about 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. Sometimes you have to watch where you sit down in the cave, but truly otherworldly place to be. This is one of the largest rooms in the cave system, called the Coliseum. The highest elevation lake in North America is this, in the cave system, a subglacial lake in the volcano crater underneath the glacier ice called Lake Adelaide, and that was discovered by our team in 2014. So I should note that it was a team in the 1970s, which was the first to do serious explorations of the cave system. And that included Explorers Club fellow Bill Steele, a very famous caver for a lot of other reasons. And they mapped 1,800 meters of cave passage. Our most recent expeditions have doubled the length of the cave. So this is the East Crater Cave, now at 3.5 kilometers of map passage. Not only that, we found it to be the deepest glacial volcanic cave in the world. And nearby in the crater of Mount St. Helens, which is still active, a number of lava domes have formed since the 1980 eruption, and a glacier, which is one of the fastest growing glaciers that's in North America. Around the lava dome, we have the same sort of phenomenon. We have steaming cave entrances that are circumnavigating the 2008 lava dome within the St. Helens crater. So over a series of expeditions, we have been mapping and exploring those cave systems, which first started forming around the year 2012. So this is a very recent feature. But some amazing underground geography and geomorphology that we see in the cave system, all again formed by volcanic gas and steam. And this has proven to be a very unique environment. So this is Iceworm, which is NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, one of the NASA centers. The world's first ice climbing robot was tested in the crater of Mount St. Helens. And this is a precursor technology of what we would hope to use in the future to explore some of these icy bodies of the solar system, like Europa or Enceladus. Now, Iceworm is just one concept prototype. If you look up a few, there's probably 5 or 6 different cave-specific space exploration technologies that are being developed by teams around the world. And that's because these ice-covered worlds that have a heat source and these cave-like environments, they're a true analog for what we might find on other planets. So the robotic technology is one angle, but the other is the astrobiological potential. So we work with astrobiologists that are trying to find what kind of life lives in these environments, because they may be similar to what we'll find on other planets. So with that, we were very interested to discover 10 distinct glacial volcanic caves, over 2 kilometers long now, in the crater of Mount St. Helens. And if you notice, they're all given, I had to learn a lot about mythical Godzilla monsters, because we ended up with the theme of Godzilla caves, and so I had to name them all sort of consistent with that. So that's the map of the crater there. So a few years ago, you can imagine my eyes lit up when we heard that a number of openings had occurred in the glacier at Mount Meager in British Columbia. Mount Meager, properly termed the Mount Meager Volcanic Complex, meaning that Mount Meager is Canada's only currently active volcano. So to give a size of the scale, you can see the images of our team here by the one of the openings in the glacier at Mount Meager. And so, of course, being that this was the niche, the very specialized niche, we were able to go with some specialized equipment in order to further explore in the Mount Meager cave system. And so it was interesting because with this newly seemingly active volcano, if we could discover a bit more about the composition of the volcanic gas, or the temperature of the vent where the gas is coming from, this could tell us more about the magmatic system. So this image from my helmet camera is the limit of human exploration within the Mount Meager cave. So as you can see, it's not the end. And so we are definitely hoping to go back to add a little bit more knowledge of the volcano. It's definitely getting a lot of attention in British Columbia for a few reasons, landslides and unstable slopes being another one. Okay. That was the quick tour of some of Canada's most amazing features and some of the glacial volcanic caves. And it's truly been an effort of 50 years and teams building on the work of other teams and explorers building on their teamwork and their efforts together to bring all of those discoveries to you. So definitely each one of those expeditions relied on a number of people, of which I was one of. So certainly I'm honored to be here to tell you about some of these places. So thank you, George. I'll hand it back to you.
Christian, if you could only see my face while you were giving that presentation, I was just lighting up and beaming with your descriptions of these extreme environments, which I personally adore so much. And you've got me daydreaming in the best way possible. And let's not forget, 2 days ago was the anniversary of the Mount St. Helens eruption. I remember it from when I was a child.
Yeah, it's amazing to be inside the crater of Mount St. Helens and just imagine the force of the explosion. And I mean, pictures don't do it justice. The crater is over 1.5 kilometers wide. So to blow out the side of a mountain and cause that much devastation, and to be inside that and see the activity still happening, it's an amazing experience. I've been very privileged to go on a number of expeditions inside the crater to do these explorations. So definitely an amazing experience.
I'm green with envy over here. So we have one more presenter tonight, and I wanted to make sure that we included someone from the Canadian chapter who was also named as part of the Explorers Club 50, this new initiative that was put forth by the club to recognize these people that are doing these expeditions that the world needs to know more about. And Susan Eaton made that list, and we're very proud of that. She's a geoscientist, journalist, and polar explorer. She spends a lot of her time in the Snorkel Zone, that upper level of the water column. And she's the founder and leader of the all-female Sedna Epic Expedition, which is comprised of both Indigenous and non-Indigenous women, ocean explorers, scientists, artists, movie makers, photographers, educators, and divers. And their mission is to scout and document and basically study climate change, how it's affecting Arctic sea ice in particular. In 2020, of course, she made our list of the 50 people changing the world. She's a member of the Women's Divers Hall of Fame. Ocean Geographic Society named her one of the top 18 most influential women in ocean conservation. And she's been named one of Canada's top 100 modern day explorers and trailblazers. So last but most certainly not least, Susan Eaton, off to you. And she's coming to us, by the way, from Iqaluit in Nunavut, our most northerly of all of our presenters tonight, by far.
This is true, George. Thank you very much for the warm welcome. The Northern Lights do play overhead in the skies here in Nunavut, but my screen share has trees in it, and I live well above the tree line. So those are not the Northern Lights right now, and we're approaching the summer solstice to almost 100% sunlight. So I'm coming to you from Baffin Island in Nunavut territory. I'm going to share my screen here. And then I'm going to find my PowerPoint. So I may need, so share, okay. I'm dealing with two 27-inch screens here. And so can everyone see my PowerPoint, the main slide? Excellent. All right, then I'm going to be actually moving. All right. I'm delighted to be here and present the Sedna Epic Expedition, empowering the next generation of women Arctic leaders. And Team Sedna brings the ocean to eye level for youth around the planet with a special focus on Indigenous youth living in the circumpolar regions. You know, it's interesting here. I'm trying to get to start my slide here. Okay.
You can usually just click on the screen or the little arrow on the bottom left when you hover there.
Yeah, I think that absolutely. Perfect. I'm just discombobulated because I have two screens and the presentation's playing on the other one.
No
I'm going to take you to the circumpolar region here. Essentially, we're looking at the Arctic Ocean, which is landlocked, which is distinctly different than Antarctica, which is a continent that is surrounded by the circumantarctic current that makes it really cold. We've got the Arctic here, which is surrounded by land. And when you look at it from this perspective, you'll see that we've got the United States, Canada, Greenland, Svalbard, and Russia here. So the Arctic Ocean is warming at a dramatic pace, and disappearing sea ice. We've heard Jill mention it too. We saw her lovely images. It's disappearing both in terms of its areal extent and its thickness. And Team Sedna has been working in the Arctic since 2014. Our proof of concept expedition took off from northern Labrador here in what we call Nunatsiavut, the Inuit region of Labrador. Jill was part of that expedition, by the way, and took some amazing underwater images to document Team Sedna. We sailed up the coast. We were going to go all the way up to here, then cross over the Davis Strait, but pack ice prevented us from doing so. So we crossed over the Davis Strait roughly in this direction and then ended up here in Nuuk at the end of that expedition. That was 2014. In 2016, Team Sedna landed in Iqaluit, which is where I currently live, the capital of Nunavut on Baffin Island. This is Baffin Island. We spent 2 weeks in community delivering our ocean knowledge sharing and mobilization program to Inuit and Northern youth, and trying out new technology as well, ocean technology in the expedition. In 2018, we returned to the Arctic, and we were going to take off from Resolute up here in the Northwest Passage, but pack ice prevented us from doing that. So the expedition actually started in Kangerlussuaq in Greenland. We went up the coast of Greenland, crossed over the top of Greenland here into the Northwest Passage, and then down the southeast coast of Greenland or Nunavut and back to Greenland. That was 2018. 2019, we jumped over here to the northern Arctic coast of Norway during the winter herring run, and I'll speak about that at the very end of my expedition. So Essentially, we've had 4 expeditions since 2014. We were really excited to be the Expedition of the Year with the Royal Canadian Geographical Society in 2014, carrying the flag to the Arctic, team of women exploring the Arctic. All right, then. Okay. Team Sedna set out to snorkel the Northwest Passage. It was going to be a snorkel relay of the Northwest Passage. And in order to snorkel the Northwest Passage, well, you have to get some time in the water. And we set off in 2014 to prove that we could do it using diver propulsion vehicles. We went long distances with DPVs or scooters up to 70 kilometers in one stretch to 9,000 feet of water between Greenland and Baffin Island or Nunavut. In fact, we could do it. We snorkeled across the Arctic Circle. We did a lot of things and many firsts. And that was where we were initially focused, to boldly go where no man has gone before. The team was all women. And I'm going to basically tell you why we're not going to do that, actually. We've retooled, we've pivoted, and based on running 4 expeditions since 2014, based on 80 women participating in the expedition, going to 4 different countries, and delivering our ocean knowledge program to more than 1,000 Inuit youth, girls, and elders. We still have the same vision, but our mission has changed. And so I will get to that shortly. I'd like to also acknowledge these beautiful photographs from Joe Boone, who's a photographer in France, who's one of Sedna Epic's advisors here. We are in the Snorkel Zone, that magical place where the sea meets the air, the land, and obviously in the Arctic, the sea ice. And that's where all the air-breathing animals come to the surface to breathe. So if you're a snorkeler, and you're in the Arctic, whether it's narwhals or belugas or bowhead whales or polar bears, as Jill has snorkeled with, you're very, very much up close and personal with these animals. And when I'm snorkeling with belugas or other small animals, sometimes I can't distinguish between me blowing the air out of my snorkel and the whales exhaling. It's a truly magical place. And in the Snorkel Zone, we scout, record, document disappearing sea ice in the Arctic. We also scuba dive too, by the way. And but the Snorkel Zone is where a lot of our work is done. And it's a zone that scuba divers try to get through very quickly as they're going to deeper targets for diving. And it's a zone that is not often studied by scientists. So we're looking at the upper 5 meters of the water column specifically. We bring the ocean to eye level for youth. And those youth in the Circumpolar region often don't swim. So we use remotely operated vehicles, mobile aquariums that we populate and temporarily house with sea critters, and snorkel safaris, during which we lead young Inuit women and Northern women on safaris of discovery, because again, a lot of these women don't swim, and falling in the water in the Arctic means hypothermia and potentially death. So culturally, for Inuit in Canada, the ocean is something that's deemed to be very dangerous. I'm going to actually play a video clip to show you what our ocean knowledge mobilization and sharing program looks like. And it takes place in Baffin Island in Frobisher Bay in July, August of 2016. Team Sedna is flying in a Twin Otter aircraft here, and we're flying down the southeast coast of Frobisher Bay, where we see hanging glaciers. We're working in the Arctic with Inuit team members, Inuit advisors, and we're running ocean mentorship program for girls ages 16 to 24, both Northern and Inuit girls. On the breakwater in Iqaluit, we set up shop, and we have large saltwater aquariums, and we're putting the hoses in the bay to get ready to put the water in the aquariums. The tides here are pretty extreme, up to 45 feet. And we're filling the aquariums because the scuba diving team is just coming back with all the sea critters that they've collected. We've got lots of invertebrates and small fishes that none of these people have seen. None of the Inuit see these animals because they live fairly deep compared to on the Pacific or Atlantic coasts of Canada. We set up a robot program, and the kids design, build, and fly their robots. And you know, they learn how to build robots, and then also to design and redesign if they don't work. Okay. Oops. We'll just stop that. So apart from working with youth, with the robot program, the aquariums, and the snorkel safaris, we're working with Indigenous elders and women to understand traditional knowledge so that we can incorporate that with our scientific research when we're working in the field. And obviously, our goal is to mitigate global warming and the impacts that global warming is having on the Arctic. Climate change is happening in real time. It's happening to people in real time. And for Sedna, we believe that the face of climate change in the Arctic is not iconic polar bears or narwhals or belugas, all of which are being impacted, but we see the human side of climate change in the Arctic, and that is the Indigenous people who in turn rely upon these animals for their sustenance. Sedna is the Inuit goddess of the sea and the mother of all marine mammals. And Ayu Peter, our Inuit advisor here, who has her hands on a seal skin, has the legend of Sedna tattooed on her fingers here. Ayu is a great supporter and a vocal advocate for the Inuit right to hunt seal, eat seal, and to wear seal. And so we are learning culturally from our Indigenous partners and team members about the issues that relate to them in the circumpolar region, which are different issues than scientists coming up to the Arctic would probably have even foreseen. So having Inuit in our team is extremely, extremely important to our team. We're empowering women and girls and developing future leaders to tackle societal change in the Arctic. Their society is changing at a rapid, rapid pace. 50 years ago, many Inuit were born in sod huts in the summer or igloos in the winter. So just in 3 generations, their lifestyle has changed dramatically. And with that comes some issues related to dealing with colonialization, residential schools, etc. So societal change is happening and being exacerbated at the same time as climate change. And so on the left, we have Anna Kumunen, who is a Sami reindeer herder from Sweden. And during our Women's Leadership Program in Tromsø, Norway in November of 2019, she relayed to us the issues that climate change is causing with her reindeer herd. They're losing reindeer to climate change because it's raining instead of snowing, and the ground is freezing, and the reindeer can't get to the lichens and the moss below. Her lifestyle, traditional lifestyle, is being impacted by climate change. On the right is Kelly Frazier from Sanikiluaq or the Belcher Islands in Hudson Bay. Kelly is a Nook or Inuit from Nunavut, and she's a professional performer, singer, and Juno-nominated singer. Unfortunately, Kelly died by suicide after the expedition, several weeks after the expedition. So it's just yet another example of the issues that Inuit face in remote northern communities, where there are a lot of issues related to colonialization, poverty, lack of healthcare, and so on. And I'd like to dedicate our presentation to Kelly, who made a remarkable contribution to Team Sedna in 2019. Here we are at the Sami Center in the University of Tromsø in Norway at our Women's Leadership Program. It's the first time we have held a formal Women's Leadership Program. The woman speaking is Professor Bratlund, and she is Sami as well, but she's Sami from a fishing culture, very different than Sami from a reindeer culture. And she's talking about the role that women play in Sami culture and Sami fisheries in Norway on the northwest coast of Norway. And you can see Anna is sitting here with her beautiful Sami traditional costume. And Camila also wears the traditional Sami costume, and she is working at the university and presenting to us. She's not dressed traditionally. We provide role models for young women, both Northern and Inuit, and we also are working with young women around the world who participate in our expeditions. We've had women from the ages of 16 to 78 snorkeling and diving in the Arctic in our teams. We're providing role models and mentors for these young women who are university students from the South, early career scientists, postdocs, and so on. So this is Team Sedna in 2016 on the pier in Iqaluit with our robots after we'd finished a couple of days of robot programming with children. And here is IU right in the center, IU Peter, our Inuit advisor. And here is Alexia and Kristen. And instead of me telling you what it means for these young women to be part of Team Sedna, I'd like to let them speak, and you can hear from them what it means to be part of Team Sedna. 2 years later, we're seeing a video from 2 years later, shot in the Northwest Passage. These two young women have progressed from snorkelers as mentees in our program to full-blown team members, scuba divers, dry suit divers, and you're going to see their story for their first polar dive in the Northwest Passage. These young women are supported by a team of women, Team Sedna, and by female dive masters. It's exceptional to have 18 women in a dive expedition in the Arctic.
Amazing. We got to go down among some sea ice, and I saw some Heinerth sculpin. You can see where the rock ended to the sand. You can see all the kelp. At one point, we looked up and we could see ice right above us. I've never been under it. So that was probably one of the highlights of that dive. Just to be surrounded by ice.
Susan, just a heads up, we're having a real trouble with the audio. You might want to provide a little commentary on what's being said.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. These two young women are diving for the first time in their home territory of Nunavut. And they're talking about how it's inspiring to dive in Nunavut, because not many people get to dive in Nunavut like Jill and I do. And yet these Inuit women have, learned how to scuba dive, and the ultimate finale of their course with Sedna was to dive in their own territory.
And my own limits, even in things that I want to do, and things I want to learn, and when I want to challenge myself. I'm thankful to have had this opportunity.
What I was saying, I'm sorry you didn't hear the audio, is that our ocean mentorship program for young women started in 2016 with 10 young women who are Inuit and Northern women. And two of these young women who lived in Ottawa and Toronto were able to learn how to scuba dive in Southern Canada, certify in Southern Canada. And then they came to the Canadian Arctic as full team members. And that was the cycle from mentee to team member. And they were saying how wonderful it was to explore their own territory underwater, because very few people get to do that, firstly. And I'd suggest that not many Inuit are divers. So I would like to jump to the last part of my presentation, which takes us to 70 degrees north latitude, November of 2019, our fourth Sedna Epic expedition, where we ran the formal women's leadership program. You saw the photographs from that. where we had Sami and Inuit women together speaking about issues related to gender, equity, equality, and other women in our team speaking about issues related to being female explorers, being female scientists, and what are the barriers to progression for women in these fields. And essentially SEDNA is hoping to get women to the table. We want to be at the boardroom tables in corporations. We want to be the chief scientists of expeditions. We want to be at the policy table when governments and organizations are looking at issues related to climate change and development in the Arctic. So we are focused on getting women field experiences through our expeditions, scientific experience in terms of running our ocean programs, and obviously working with the indigenous people of these various countries in the Circumpolar region. What's so exciting about Norway is that, of course, the herring run in the winter draws hundreds and hundreds of orcas and humpbacks who are there to feast on the animals, the herring. And so we were conducting ocean science at the same time. We ran a acoustic platform that was built for us by the Scripps Oceanographic Institution in San Diego. We were doing water sampling for eDNA, environmental DNA, looking at orcas in the water. And we were conducting an orca wellness index study of the health of the orcas. But at the same time, we were also snorkeling. And here's Kelly, as I said, Kelly Frazier, who is our Inuit team member who came from Canada for the expedition, and she's getting ready to get in. Kelly was a strong swimmer, but had never snorkeled. But I can tell you that as an Inuit, she was in the water more quickly than any of the rest of us. And she stayed in the water. She was never cold. And she was my snorkel buddy. So here we are checking in with each other, because just like scuba diving, polar snorkeling like this means you've got to check in with your buddy. Are you cold? Can you feel your fingers? Can you feel your toes? Are you okay? It's dark water. It's thousands of feet deep, and there are big dark predators in the ocean here. So I'm just going to end with a short video that Garmin, the equipment manufacturer, created. The underwater shots in this video were taken by Team SEDNA's videographers. So I hope you enjoyed this. And Garmin has a program called Women of Adventure, and they were on the expedition vessel with us to create this film to talk about what SEDNA does and what the issues are related to the ocean.
Our world is changing rapidly.
George, let me know if you can hear the audio, please.
I cannot.
Yeah, we need
You
the audio
cannot.
up a little
Okay.
bit.
Only by seeking answers can we begin to affect change.
I can hear it faintly.
I'll give you a play-by-play since you can't hear the audio. We are on an expedition vessel in the Norwegian Arctic, and Team SEDNA is there to study what's going on in the ocean with respect to ocean change. Sea ice is disappearing, glaciers are melting. How does this affect the migratory routes of the orcas, the humpbacks, and other ocean predators? 71% of the planet's area is covered by ocean. The oceans are acidifying and warming, including in the Arctic regions.
We know it's a threat to our oceans.
Plastics, they are a big threat to the ocean.
How much plastic is in the water column? The plankton.
We're doing our water sampling here for eDNA in the expedition. The data went to University of Tromsø to be included in their large study of how many orca visit these waters every winter. Here's Kelly and I talking during the expedition.
And how can we inspire and empower them to combat ocean change and societal change?
The water was only about 4 degrees, so not cold compared to the Canadian Arctic. There's no sea ice here. There's no icebergs here because the Gulf Stream runs off the coast of Norway. So at 70 degrees north in Canada in late November, it would be frozen. But here we are able to snorkel and or dive. This is Team SEDNA. You can see we have a variety of ages in the group.
Together, we're making a real difference.
our science team on board the ship deck, taking the data in as the water for the water sampling program.
Our world.
So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm sorry you couldn't hear the audio. I live in the Arctic, and sometimes we don't have exactly the same capability for broadband as the South. But thank you for your time and interest.
Oh, thank you so much, Susan. We understand the challenges of broadband in the Canadian North, and we're just thankful that you're able to attend tonight. And we got we could hear you loud and clear, so that's good. So I want to thank all 4 of our presenters tonight. All of you are inspiring to me and absolutely to others, especially young people. You are all stewards of discovery, conservation, and exploration. And I strongly encourage members of the Canadian chapter who are not fellows of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society to certainly consider it. And we would love to see some more explorers as fellows. And I think we've got a bit of time for some Q&A, do we not, Nancy?
We do, and I'm going to jump in to start with here, since I have the first right of refusal, I guess, to both George and John. So we've got so many Canadian explorers who've tuned in tonight and will in the future with this recording. How do they go about applying to become a fellow in the Canadian Royal Geographical Society?
So they need to be nominated by an existing fellow. So it's a process. You can't just kind of apply or randomly turn up. It's an internal process, very different from, for example, a Royal Geographical Society in the UK. So you would need to have an existing fellow, and there's some wonderful fellows obviously on the program this evening who could, I'm sure, help with that. And then it goes to a committee which adjudicates the nominations, and ultimately the fellows are then recommended to our College of Fellows. So the full body of fellows votes on inducting new fellows, which we do each year. So it's a bit of a process, but that's how we keep it to really outstanding people. And our fellowship, as you say, you've heard some of the remarkable people tonight who are among our fellows, but there's also people like Margaret Atwood or Sir David Attenborough, President Jimmy Carter, who are fellows. So we have a very distinguished fellowship. It's a broad cross-section of people, and they just have a common interest in geography, obviously promoting geography, and also in particular the geography of Canada.
Thank you. And having attended the last face-to-face meeting, gathering, it's one not to be missed. So I'm looking forward to it being open again soon and going back. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. I hope to see you there. We're likely not going to be having an in-person fellows dinner this year, but it's sort of like a junior version of ECAD, which I've been to a number of times and I think is spectacular. But it is a very special event for sure. Last year the last time we held it in person, which was 2019, we had about 600 people in Ottawa. So it's always a great event. So I look forward to seeing you there again.
I look forward to being there. Thank you. So, Jill, you talked about not having a lot of role models, especially female role models growing up. And then you see the presentation that Susan's done, and you've participated in that. And you, of course, have made a huge impact on young females. So thinking back, what advice would you give to 10-year-old Jill Heinerth? You're muted here. There we go.
Sorry, somebody's got to do that on every call, right?
Sure.
I would just say know that there are no bounds to what you want to achieve. So nothing is impossible. Just go for it. Yeah.
Good advice. And my last question before, I know Anne's got a lot of questions coming in, so I'll keep this short. Christian, you gave us such an incredible vicarious tour with Canadian caves. I'm wondering what percentage of Canadian caves did you cover in your presentation tonight?
Okay, well, I think I talked about 3 prominent examples, and we have not done any sort of review that covers the scope of them, other than we did a rough estimate a little while back. And in Western Canada alone, we were able to find about 1,800 examples of known caves. So that does not include anything. There are many caves and karst areas in Manitoba, in Ontario, Quebec, and even in the Atlantic provinces. We have sea caves. We have so many different examples. So that would be a low estimate. And of course, they're still being discovered. Any weekend, you could go prospecting for caves in some parts of Canada and probably find new ones that nobody had ever documented. So long answer for basically saying we don't know.
Got it. Thank you. Let's get those vaccines there and get everybody vaccinated so we could open up the borders and go play. Okay. And I'm going to turn it over to you because I know a bunch of questions have come in.
So we do have a lot of questions. And George, I just want to tell you, thank you for putting this together. From the first moment I asked you, you're always so incredibly willing, and you put together a spectacular program tonight. So thank you so much to everybody online, to John and Christian and Jill and Susan. Thank you for all presenting. They were all remarkable. So our first question is for any of you, from George on YouTube. As a post-secondary student, how can I start getting involved with these exciting expeditions? I just recently got my open water diver certification, and I'm very interested in cave exploration. What should I do? Do you want to take it, Christian?
Sure. I guess when you mentioned the dive certification, I'm assuming maybe more of a cave diving interest, but for any dry caving exploration as well, the one starting point would be to look up wherever you are, if it's in the US or Canada, is there a caving organization that you could get involved with? So in Canada, there are many, each province typically has one, and in the US, the National Speleological Society. These are good starting points to get involved with recreational cave exploration, and then sort of use that as a stepping stone into exploring new caves or undocumented caves, or becoming part of expeditions that are really pushing the boundaries of what we know.
I would say volunteer and join. So almost every opportunity I've had in life, including my entire career, was built on volunteering opportunities where I spoke up and helped out at an expedition. And you don't have to be a diver, you don't have to be a caver. There's always a role, whether you're actually going out into the field or not. There's always something that needs to be done. So volunteer and join, the Explorers Club as a student member. That's a great way to connect with people and get involved in a local chapter.
Terrific. So this one is for Christian from Vicky Siegel. And I guess she was watching your presentation and she wants to know why not rig a traverse line at the holes in the floor. So I'm not quite sure exactly where that, but I'm sure you understand it. So go ahead, I'll let you answer it.
Yeah, it is a good question. There are swaths of Castleguard Cave that don't have any hand lines or rigging that I think if we weren't in such a remote area, perhaps there would have been more hardware and things brought in over the 50 years to do that, but it just hadn't really happened. And it's been a place where you can sort of just get by without them. And for that reason, I think it just hadn't really happened before. So, but I recognize the point you're trying to bring up, and definitely there are a lot of places that we have to be very careful about traversing over areas like that.
So just so that you know, the new president, Richard Garriott, has been watching along with you tonight. And Christian, I think he wants to go on your next expedition, wherever it may be. So you might want to get ready to bring him along with you. Susan Eaton, this one is from Mark from Rhode Island. Not to get too political, but what would you say about the creation of Nunavut in 1999? And if you think this stands as a pioneering model of formal recognition of Indigenous people and their lands in the world today, 20 years later, lessons learned? Is Sedna smiling?
Very good question. 20 years later, Nunavut's government is run by Inuit politicians. The percentage of public servants is growing within the government, and there's some very, very progressive and powerful Inuit organizations whose role is to advance Inuit culture, tradition, languages, and so on. So I think that it is a great model. The size of Nunavut is huge. It's about 2 million square kilometers. It's extremely large. In fact, it goes all the way west to the Northwest Territories. And yet we only have 39,000 people. A territory that's bigger than Europe with 39,000 people in 25 communities. So it's really quite fascinating. It's been very interesting to see the COVID-19 vaccine rollout here, because the communities have all been vaccinated to a fairly large degree because of the Indigenous populations and vulnerable communities and so on. So I think that just from a COVID perspective, Nunavut is far ahead of the percentage of Canadians vaccinated than the South. So small communities distributed across the territory are all unique. There's 2 different languages spoken. There's many dialects spoken, and I'm so excited living in Iqaluit when I hear the predominant language being spoken is Inuktitut. It's very exciting, and so I have to say that. I'm not sure that I would describe it as an experiment. It is an evolution of Indigenous values and territory, and we're seeing it across Canada. We also have the same type of advances in the Northwest Territories, the Yukon, and in our First Nations south of the 60th parallel. So yes, Inuit is evolving. It's young, it's 20 years old. And yes, there's some issues, but I think that the Inuit traditions are strong. The language is strong, and that's a really important a basis of culture is language. So I'm very optimistic.
I mean, we're all watching here and looking at some of the clips that you sent us about these young women learning how to build robots and working with ROVs. It's just an incredible work that you're doing, creating this social change. I guess the question is also, how is everybody being affected by COVID? I know I spoke to you the other day, and you're pretty much in lockdown right now. Is that correct?
Well, in Iqaluit, we're in our first lockdown. So what's really ironic is that because the territory has been closed to non-residents, so this is the first case of COVID in Iqaluit. It's 5 weeks ago. So it's been very unique here until 5 weeks ago. There have been some cases in the Western Arctic, but there's no tourists. The travel industry has been closed down. There's no boats going through the Northwest Passage this summer, the second season in a row that there'll be no vessels going through the Northwest Passage because of the risk of exposure to the small communities, Indigenous or Inuit communities along the route. So, for people who are involved in the tour industry or Inuit outfitters and non-Inuit outfitters, it's certainly the lack of tourists coming here is serious for them economically. But there are a lot of programs, financial programs to assist with the travel industry here for these Indigenous and non-Indigenous tour operators. Yeah, it's been very interesting here. But I think that there's only been three deaths in Nunavut due to COVID so far.
And John, I know you were talking about putting off your main event. What's in store for you next? Where's your next expedition to when you're able to get around? You're muted.
I was just saying I would like to go just about anywhere. So I'm just going to hit the road. Well, I think like many people, it's just been an incredibly frustrating situation, and the fact that we're now in a major third wave in Canada. We did very well early days in the pandemic, especially vis-a-vis the US, but that is now all flipped, and our much slower rollout of vaccines has had an impact here. But we're gradually coming out of it, and I think a lot of people have high hopes for this summer. I know we've got a few expeditions going into the field this summer, which is very exciting. And so we're returning to normal lives. So there's no end to places I haven't in mind, but I got to get down to DC soon. I hope I'm going to be in New York soon, and places like that, just to do some meetings that are long overdue.
Well, I know we're all anxious to be together again, so we look forward to seeing you down here. This question is for Luna. Thanks to all, I'm from Luna. Thanks to all the speakers for your amazing presentations this evening. This is for Jill or Susan. Any tips to combat cold water diving? How do you know when you should call the dive?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, if you're uncomfortable, like extremely uncomfortable, then always, call the dive. But it really is about getting good equipment. So a good dry suit with good lofty, professional, technical undergarments that will protect you even if they get wet is really important. So it really is kind of all about the gear, and you do get used to it. I think Susan would agree that the first dive is the hardest, and then it gets easier and easier and easier, and you do acclimatize.
Susan, do you want to add anything, or?
We've used some equipment. We've used some equipment that actually has cheats a little bit. It looks really extreme when you're snorkeling and diving in ice. But if you've got a heated undersuit and heated glove liners because you're carrying a lithium-ion battery on your outside on a belt, then you're pretty toasty. And in fact, you're overheating before you get into the water. So we have tried heated undersuits, heated gloves, and even heated booties. So heated through a battery. So that's one option in extreme cold as well. But I think it's, as Jill said, you just dress for it, and there's always going to be another opportunity to dive or snorkel again, so don't stay in too long. And also, as I said, is checking with my snorkel buddy Kelly to make sure if she's uncomfortable, it's time for both of us to get out. So it's diving in buddy pairs and making sure that the other person is comfortable and safe is probably your priority as well as it's her priority.
I know Nancy is acting as VP of chapters tonight, but this is also her forte. Nancy, would you like to comment on this?
I would echo exactly what Susan and Jill said. Make sure that you are trained, you've got the right equipment. The best piece of equipment you've got is what's between your ears. So use your common sense. And Susan, exactly, if your buddy's uncomfortable, then it's time to call the dive or the snorkel. You're in it together, and you've got another opportunity in the future. So live to dive another day.
So this question is from Brian. Jill, can an iceberg ever rotate or tumble on you? Could it be dangerous?
Yes. Iceberg diving is one of the most dangerous pursuits in diving, because as the iceberg changes, as it's melting and being resculpted by the wind and the waves, it's basically changing shape, and it will, destabilize and roll and flip, sometimes slowly, sometimes very quickly. So I guess my first iceberg dive was more than 20 years ago. And since then, just through experience, I've learned to kind of pick my iceberg, but it's still never a guaranteed safe thing to do. We wear helmets, we get in the water well away from the iceberg, swim to it underwater, and then swim away from it underwater, and try not to be on the surface right up against the iceberg. So there's a lot of sort of special rules. And then even once we're in the water, we're doing a lot of observation to make a choice to see whether it seems like it's stable and safe enough to continue.
So this is for sort of Christian and George together. As Richard Garriott was watching, and he was watching as you were climbing down the fissures in the cave, and he was wondering whether it's really dangerous. So I'm just going to ask the two of you, George and Christian, to comment on the dangers of going into the different types of caves that you do.
Yeah, I could, I guess, comment on Castleguard Cave itself and the fissures. That's not a place where you'd want to slip. I mean, as you saw in the photos, there isn't really a floor to speak of. It just sort of gets narrower and narrower towards the bottom, and you could perhaps get wedged in there. It really speaks to the remoteness of caves and the inaccessibility. And one author who wrote about Canadian caves a few years back said, don't have an accident in Castleguard, because it would take every caver in Canada to evacuate you. So it's just truly an amazing place, but one that we have to respect as well. And so we follow all of the rules that you should follow to anybody going into a cave. Wear the appropriate equipment, such as a helmet, have 3 sources of light, have a team of people you can rely on so we don't go solo, and that you have emergency supplies and things with you in case you do get stuck somewhere. You can deal with cold temperatures for time being while somebody goes to get help and so forth. So there's definitely strategies to mitigate the risk, but we can't eliminate it completely.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, in addition to the regular cave protocols that Christian is talking about, certain caves have different personalities, if you will, and some of them have unique challenges. Like some of them may have low oxygen environments, so you may have to bring SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, with you, or gas monitors, things like that. One of the caves that I had the great fortune to be able to explore was Nica Crystal Cave in Mexico, home of the largest crystals in the world. And the air temperature inside was 52 Celsius, 56 Celsius, so over 121 degrees Fahrenheit with near 100% humidity. So we had to wear ice-filled suits and special chilled air respirator systems and things like that. So over and above the regular danger and protocols of being in these caves, you also have to take into consideration the specific characteristics of that environment of the individual caves themselves, because they're all different.
Thank you. And for the last question tonight, actually Mark is writing in, and someone else just wrote in also. Christian, they would like to know if anything you found in the cave was named after you, whether there's a little microbe that has your name attached to it. And Mark also is asking whether, does anyone care to comment about the United States' reluctance to adopt to the metric system and how that affects exploration data collection? Humorous anecdotes are welcome. You know, you talk about 674 meters below the earth. That is a lot taller than our Freedom Tower here in New York. But, you know, we have to go to the telephone to actually figure out what the correlation is between metrics and feet. So Christian, I'll let you take it. And then anybody else that wants to make a comment on that, feel free.
Yeah, I could comment because I'm just involved in the cartography for all of these different caves in some of them in Canada and the US. And certainly it can cause some difficulties when we're not sure of how a measurement was taken, if it was in feet or meters and so forth. So definitely there are some challenges, but the one thing I could, I guess, rely on to sort of force the topic, if there is a chance to standardize, is that scientific publishing is typically in the metric. So if we can start off our data collection that way, then we can kind of say, push the issue and say that we should just standardize to that. Yeah, that's a partial answer. I don't know if somebody else wants to add to it.
Reach the metric system.
Yeah, we really need to switch to metric. It's even worse in cave diving because cave diving survey really kind of started American centric, and so everybody knotted their guidelines in 10-foot increments, and so many caves have been surveyed in feet, and it's terribly confusing when you get to a place like Mexico. Are you going to do it in feet? Are you going to do it in meters? And yeah, it's a mess.
And has anything been named? Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, I was just going to address that one. So yeah, we typically don't name things in caves after living people or something, but on occasion, some other team member may bestow a name of a passage after a person. So usually wouldn't be you naming it after yourself or something like that. So no, I haven't had anything named for me specifically. The closest perhaps was in the Mount Rainier cave system. A team of us was exploring one branch of the cave, which was actually new from all of the previous exploration, and sort of ended up getting in this narrow tunnel, which was rising towards the crater rim. And it just sort of got narrower and narrower and narrower. And unlike the one in my image behind me, this one was literally, you know, your head tilted to the side with the volcano crater rock on your chest and the ice on your back, and sort of popped out of a cave entrance along the crater rim, which was now amongst the highest known cave entrances in North America. And it was such a grueling, miserable crawl. And the two people, it was myself and another Canadian. So the team decided to name it the Canadian Crawl. And it's such a crawl that it's the kind of thing that it would never be repeated, because nobody would subject themselves to that kind of misery. One right beside it, actually, that we did the very next day ended up named the Misery Crawl. So they were both kind of the same character, just sort of terrible places that, you know, you wouldn't do unless you had to, I suppose.
There is one place that's named after me in Mexico. My first husband and I discovered quite a remarkable deep cave system at the Pit in Mexico, which is now quite a popular place to go diving. And I did not name it after myself. It was named Jill's Chamber. The reason why it was called Jill's Chamber, and some people erroneously just call it Jill's Room, it's Jill's Chamber because that's where I got a case of decompression illness from some pretty aggressive diving, almost 400 feet deep. And I ended up in a recompression chamber being treated for a case of the bends. So that became Jill's Chamber.
It's a great story. It's a really great little story there. So I just want to end with a comment from Brian Hansen. And this is for all of you that are on screen. And this is including Nancy, who originally is Canadian. Amazing group of presenters. Canada can be extremely proud. So just bravo to all of you for presenting tonight. It was just remarkable. And this is one for the books. We'll name it one of the most amazing chapter connects. So thank you all for joining in tonight. Nancy, about next week, I think we have the possibility. Go ahead.
Sure. Mm-hmm. First of all, Anne, I want to say thank you so much to my Canadian brothers and sisters. It was great to see you tonight and showcase the wonderful things that are happening in Canada. And congratulations to all of you as Royal Canadian Geographical Society Fellows. You have done Canada proud, and of course the Explorers Club proud. And I look forward in 2022 to being in Ottawa at the Fellows Dinner. And everybody watching needs to sign up for that. So John, get ready, because your attendance is going to be much greater next year. Everybody's hungry for that opportunity, and it really is a very special event. So I look forward to that. And thank you guys for all the time that you've spent putting this presentation together and the time you've spent on screen with us tonight. It was a great time and it passed all too quickly. Next week, we think, and we're still in the process of this, Anne's been working diligently to bring us an opportunity in Spain. So you'll have to just stand by. Join us next Thursday. Watch your email. Something will be coming out. We should have another great chapter connect in Europe.
And for people watching, this Monday night is World Turtle Day. And we're going to have people joining us from all over the world, from Bangladesh, from India, from the Caribbean, from Colorado, from everywhere. And I think you'll really enjoy the program. You'll learn a lot about turtles, and we'll have a lot of species that will be presented to you. So I hope you'll all join in, and we look forward to seeing you real soon. Remember, everyone that's watching, if you want to reach out to your fellow members in Canada, we'll be happy to connect you. And we look forward to all being together real soon. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great weekend, everybody. Hope to see you Monday.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.